This podcast is produced by the Harwood Productions Podcast Network. To learn more about the network and to find more of our shows, visit us online at www.harwoodpodcast.com. This episode of Sketchup, a 3D Toolbox, is brought to you by 3D Connection, makers of the Space Navigator. To learn more about them, visit their website at www.3dconnection.com. Hey there guys, and welcome to another episode of Sketchup, a 3D Toolbox. I'm Cameron Harris, and this is episode number 34. Now today I'm going to tell you about a really neat tool in Sketchup called section cuts. Think of section cuts as a way of slicing your model into various bits and pieces, but without deleting them. So basically imagine being able to just select a portion of your model, say the back wall of a house, or the ceiling of a house, and completely removing it, so you can see inside. Let me show you how. Now, as with the last episode we did on sunlight simulation, I'm going to be using the small house project that we've been working on for the last several episodes to demonstrate the section planes and section cuts. So before we get into how to actually do these things, let me explain what they are. Basically, at this point, once you've finished your house, like once you've added the roof, the reason that I always suggest that people add the top or the roof or the ceiling of their house projects or house models last, the reason I suggest that that's the last thing you do is because once you do that, then you can't just be get yourself a bird's eye view, and it makes it a little bit trickier to see into your house to do your modeling. Say you wanted to adjust the positioning of a wall or something like that, or you want to adjust furniture, you're then basically stuck inside the house, because if you go too high, you go through the ceiling, and then you really, it does kind of get a little bit cramped and a little bit tricky to navigate through. And because it's much more confining once you have that roof on there. So that's all fine. That's all well and good. Just kind of make a mental note. Okay, roof is the last thing, one of the last things you do. Only do that once you're reasonably confident that you've finished and everything inside the house is to your liking. But what if it turns out that you have to change something inside the house? You need to adjust the positioning of a wall, change a piece of furniture, whatever it is. And it begins to get really tricky because you've got walls on either side, you got a floor, you got a roof and a ceiling. What if you don't you sometimes just wish you could just kind of like slice it open and peer into it just temporarily? Well, that's exactly what section planes and section cuts do. This is kind of like turning your model into a dollhouse, where it's like, with the old style dollhouses, you would actually open up the back, the entire back wall would just kind of come off, and then you could see inside into all the rooms and rearrange things. That's exactly what this does for your SketchUp model. So let me show you how you can do it, and then you'll actually see it in action. Now, the section plane tool isn't in your tool palette, and it's not up in your toolbar by default. Instead, you actually have to go up to the menu and go up to Tools, and then you notice the section plane tool right here. It's right above Google Earth, and you could also use Command Y or Control Y to get to there, but that's kind of tricky to remember. So I usually just go to the tools because I don't use this tool very often, but when I do use it, it's a really fantastic tool. So once you click on that, what you get is this little floating green square thing. I don't really know what to call it, but it's basically a preview of what your plane is going to be. Because basically, a section plane is kind of like, imagine this is just like a regular face in SketchUp, just a regular rectangle. That's kind of what this is. You're going to be basically placing this rectangle somewhere. And once you place it, though, it's not going to be like a regular face that you can then extrude into 3D and start modeling with. It's actually that's going to be the place where the cut happens. That's where the things are going to get sliced off. So I'll tell you what, I'll show you what happens when you place it. So at this point, nothing is really happening. This is just kind of showing you a preview of where that section cut, that section plane is going to be. And one of the things I do want to point out is that wherever you hover So wherever your mouse hovers over, whatever face your mouse hovers over, that is the angle that your section plane is going to take. You'll notice if I hover, right on this wall right here, it snaps right to that wall. It's at the same angle, same position and everything. Whereas if I go to the roof, you see how it angles itself so that it fits the roof like that. Same thing over here. And once you click and place it, you can't adjust the angle of it. So make sure that it does snap to the place where you actually want it. In this case, I'm actually going to want to slice out this entire back wall right here. So I'm just going to hover over this wall and click once. Now at this point, things are going to start looking a little bit weird, and I'll tell you why. First of all, you'll notice that the section plane has grown. So that at this point, you'll notice if we arrange ourselves back here, you can see that it's actually stretched out to basically fit your entire model. So this affects your entire model no matter where you click. And you'll see it's grown out, and it's orange, which means it's active. And you can see that it's kind of cutting, kind of slicing away. You see how this face on our roof has kind of gone away. The reason that it kind of flickers back in and out every now and then, and it's not really affecting anything else, is because we were hovering over this wall right here when we clicked. What that basically does is it sets the angle of it and everything, and you see that the angle is just right. It's at a it's facing directly into our house, but it also affects its position. So right now this section plane is literally occupying the same space as that face that we just clicked on. So because it's kind of like in the same space, it can't, at this point, the laws of SketchUp are kind of bending, and depending on the way you look at it, sometimes it will be slicing open that face and sometimes it won't be because it's kind of in a weird position. But that's just the way that's the way it will always happen. Whatever face you click on is going to end up like that, at least at first. Now, I said you can't adjust the angle of this, and once you create the section plane, you can't adjust the angle. I couldn't have it facing this way instead, facing to the right or to the left. It's always this particular plane is always going to be facing this way, wherever these arrow things here are pointing. I can't adjust where those are pointing, but I can adjust the actual position in that axis. So where these arrows are pointing, I can adjust the position of the section plane in that axis. So I can adjust it moving forward and back and affect how much it's cutting. And I'll show you how you do that. Just like with any other tool in SketchUp, you actually use the Move tool. So just click somewhere on the section plane. You can click on one of the lines or just somewhere inside it. And once you've got that selected, you switch to the Move tool. Just hit M for the Move tool, and you move it just like any other face in SketchUp. Now, you'll notice that I haven't locked it to any axis, but I can't move it up and down, and I can't move it left and right. I can only move it forward and backward. That's because it doesn't matter. Moving it up and down wouldn't actually affect anything because it doesn't just stop working at the edge of those borders. These outlines there automatically grow and shrink to fit your model. So like let's just click this here, and I will add a rectangle over here. You can see that the instant I added anything, it automatically expanded to fit that. So moving it up and down and left and right doesn't affect it at all. The only thing that affects it is moving it forwards and backwards like this, the direction that those little arrows on the corners are pointing. Now this is where it gets really fun. As I move it in, I'll get a little bit closer, and I can start to move it in, and once I start reaching that wall of my house, you see it starts to slice into it, and at that point right around there, I have completely, a little bit more. There we go. I have completely sliced through that wall of my house, and now I can see right in to my house, and I can go through and I can select all the objects in there. I can edit things, I can change things, I can do whatever I want. And it makes it really a lot easier to look at it through this way. And at this point, you see this really kind of illustrates that dollhouse point I was making earlier. You can see that it's very, very easy to just look in, see what's happening. This could be a great way to present a house to someone, as a presentation tool, but it also makes modeling inside your house, once you've enclosed all of your rooms with walls, a floor, and a ceiling, makes it way, way easier. And you could even go even further with it. Just select your section plane, push it in even more. You can see I can even, do the same thing that I did to the walls, do it to those cabinets there, do it to the sink, go all the way back if I want to, all the way back to these rooms even. And what's really so cool about this section plane tool is that it's non-destructive. So like once I click here, I haven't just completely sliced and obliterated the rest of my house. If I pull this section plane back, the rest of my house comes back too. So that is really, really cool. Now here, by the way, if you want to get rid of a section plane, you just select it, and just like any other object in SketchUp, you just hit the delete key and it goes away. So that's doing it to the wall back there. But what if I want to do it to my ceiling? Get rid of my roof. Well, if I go up to Tools and Section Plane, this is where it gets a little bit tricky because, like I said, you can't adjust the angle manually. It's going to automatically angle the section cut, the section plane, to whatever face you select, or whatever face you're hovered over when you select it. So you can see that now it's choosing the angle of my roof. If I were to click like that, then I can only move it at that kind of weird angle. And the only way I could go all the way through my house is by slicing it through at this really bizarre angle like that. That's not really what I want to do. So instead, there's another thing you can do is you could, like, for example, you could go into your house and go into Tools, Section Plane, and hover right over your ceiling, which is completely flat. And that would do it for you. But unfortunately, see, at that point, it also affects. It's also affected by what angle you're at. So you can see at this point, it's actually doing the exact opposite of what I want. It's removing everything but the ceiling because I was looking up at the ceiling, so it assumed that I wanted to look at it like this instead of the other way around. Now, if, for example, I were to go inside my roof like this, choose my section plane, and click on this. This is the same face. I'm just looking at it differently. If I click like this, then you can see that now it's working the way I want it to, and I can just position it right there, a little bit lower. And now you can see it's working the way I want it to. So experiment with this, and remember that when you click to confirm your selection of your section plane, basically whichever direction you're facing, so like if I'm facing down like I was in this case, it's going to keep everything that's below you. And then if I'm looking upwards, it's going to keep everything that's above you. And same thing from when you're going left to right and things like that. So keep that in mind. Now, before we move on, I want to thank the people who make this show possible. 3D Connection. These guys make the Space Navigator, which is a must-have accessory if you're using SketchUp. It is a fantastic piece of hardware. It just connects through USB to your computer, works on Macs and PCs, and it basically acts as a joystick in SketchUp. That's the best way to think of it. It's so intuitive. You just reach out, you grab this top part here, and you just move around inside your model. And it's so much easier to do than using the built-in navigation tools in SketchUp, using keyboard shortcuts and commands and mouse movements and trying to remember all this stuff. And even though I'm talking about ways to, make it easier to navigate inside your model in tight quarters in this episode, with the Space Navigator, it's actually pretty easy to navigate in really tight spots when you've got 4 walls on either side and a floor and a ceiling, and there's no easy way to get out of there. It's still incredibly easy to navigate through your model in SketchUp, even in really, really tight spaces. Be sure to check out their website, www.3dconnection.com, and check out their Space Navigator and all their other really great 3D products. And I want to thank them so much for sponsoring this episode of SketchUp, a 3D toolbox. Now, there's just a couple more tricks I want to show you when it comes to section planes. So I'm just going to real quick make a few more section planes. I'm going to make one right here. Push it back so I can see inside my house like that. And now, without deleting this one, I'm actually going to create another section plane. So I'm actually going to make a section plane that's coming at it from this angle. So I'll just click here, push this back so I can see into my green room there, right? Very nice. But you'll notice that once I did that, my other section plane over here is no longer working. It's still there, but it's kind of grayed out and it's not actually cutting open that side of my house anymore. You can only have one section plane active at a time. You can have multiple section planes in existence, so you see they both still exist, but only one of them can be cutting at the same time. So, and it defaults to whatever the newest section plane is. Now, if you want to toggle between two, at the moment you can see this orange one is the one that's active, the other one is kind of grayed out. All I have to do is right-click on the section plane that's grayed out, and you see that you have an option here that says active cut. And if you click active cut, then it toggles that one. You can see the one that was cutting into the green room is no longer active, but this one is. And also keep in mind that when you right-click on it, you also have the option to choose reverse, and it then reverses the direction that it's cutting. So if it's just really kind of tricky to get yourself oriented the way you want when you're clicking to create your section cut, you can always right-click on it and choose reverse again. And then it'll face the direction you want. Now, this is a really, really cool technique, but you'll notice that if you've got a lot of these section cuts here, you might want to not really see them. Once you've created them, you don't really need to have all these grayed out boxes and these orange things that look like spearheads and things like that everywhere. Maybe you want to hide those temporarily. Well, if you do want to get rid of them, you just have to go up to your menu bar and choose up under the View menu up here. Just click on View, and then you have all these checkboxes here. And if you want to get rid of the section planes, just click on section planes to toggle it, and you can see that the checkbox is now gone, and down in our model, we no longer see the big actual section planes, although this one here is still active. I can still see through this wall and into my house. Now, if I want to get them back, say to adjust them or delete them or move them or whatever, or change which one is active, I just have to go back up to View and click on Section Planes again, and they come back. Now, I'm going to go ahead and hide those again. Let's say I want to basically toggle these things off. I want to keep them because I don't want to have to recreate my section planes again, but I want them to stop working temporarily, disable them basically. Well, this is actually also in the View menu. You notice you have this other one here that says Section Cuts. Section Planes are the orange and blue and grayed out boxes with the spearheads that actually create the cuts. But Section Cuts are the actual portions that have been sliced out. If I uncheck Selection Cuts, you can see that down in my model, those section planes are no longer affecting it. Now, if I turn on my planes, you can see that they are still there, but all of them are now grayed out, completely disabled. And if I turn on section cuts again, there it goes, it's back. Well, I hope you found this episode on section cuts useful. This can be really, really handy, particularly when you're dealing with things like houses where you eventually need to enclose the interior portions of your model, and this can be great for not just modeling and making it easy to actually see inside and change things, but also as a presentation tool. If you're presenting this model to a friend or a client or something like that, just turn on the section cuts when you're ready for them, and then they just, all of a sudden, you slice off one side of the home, you can see inside really, really easy. Now, until next time, be sure to visit our website at www.harwoodpodcast.com. I'll have the show notes for this episode and the model that I was working with in this episode, the small house project we've been working on. You can download that model and play around with the section cuts yourself. And if you have any questions or comments for me about the show, you can send me an email at cameron@harwoodpodcast.com. It's been great hearing from you guys. I'd love to keep that going. Until next time, I'll just say goodbye and good modeling.